Now have Charlie Langton live to talk more about what the Oakland County judge just announced. The Oxford school shooter can be sentenced to life in prison without the chance for parole. The official sentencing happens in December. So, Charlie, what do you make of this decision?
Well, this is the right decision, but it's a complicated decision. So let's talk about what the judge really did today. This was an issue. I got to go start. Let me break it down a little bit here. If you're a minor and you commit a murder, you don't automatically get life in prison. That's what the Supreme Court said in the case of Miller versus Alabama. You have to have this hearing. Miller hearing is what it's called, and we had it. The prosecutor has the burden to undo the presumption that these teenagers don't get life in prison. And today the judge ruled the prosecutor met her burden. Now, what does that mean? That means the Oxford High School shooter can get life in prison. But we don't know what the exact sentence is going to be until December 8th. Before today, the presumption was no. You have to have the Miller hearing, and the prosecutor has to at least prove to the judge that there were a number of factors and that the shooter did not meet the, and that the shooter can get life in prison. So that's exactly what happened today. So December 8th, we'll be back in court where the judge will give the decision. Now, if you want to know what I think, because the judge telegraphed a lot during this 1 hour reading of the decision, he said that the shooter cannot be rehabilitated, and that was a major factor. Also, a major factor was that the shooter planned the crime in very big detail, actually researching what the possible penalties would be, because he made a journal and he made a video the day before the shooting. And the judge found, maybe the most important, that the shooter was mature. His age was 15, but he was a mature 15-year-old, obviously able to be understood what's the difference between right and wrong, and to plan a very sophisticated and terrible murder that he did. And again, going back to the rehabilitation, the judge called rehabilitation for this guy slim. He actually had 4 violations, which we didn't know about, while he was in the jail since he was arrested. So the bottom line here, at sentencing, now this minor can get a possible sentence of life without parole because of what he did. So that's how this ruling came down. That's what it means.
Hey, Charlie, so when it comes to sentencing, what is that process? Because we've had so many court dates and so many legal maneuvers throughout this process. So now what happens before sentencing?
So at sentencing, basically the judge is going to hear from both sides. The judge will hear a lot of victim testimony, how this has affected the life. And probably the defense, this is the shooter's attorney, will argue that he still should not get life. He should get a term of years. The minimum sentence being 25 years, the maximum 60. There is a range on the bottom, but let's not get into specifics here. The bottom line is that sentencing, the defense will still argue that he's still a young person who did a bad thing, that he can still be, he should still not get life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the bottom line here, from the way that this judge read that opinion, I mean, good luck, but that's what the judge is going to do at sentencing, and the prosecutor is going to say, look at Judge, you just had a lot of factors came out here. This was a cold-blooded killer, and I'm summarizing what the judge said in about an hour. But that's what we'll get the final sentence at. I think it's December 8th is the actual day. That's when we'll find out what the Oxford High School shooter will get.
Charlie, I have another question for you. You were talking about the Oxford shooter's demeanor during this past court proceeding. And what kind of factors, when the judge says he is beyond rehabilitation, what are those factors that the judge is looking at? Because you said he did show some emotion in court that we hadn't seen before, but obviously it wasn't the kind of emotion the judge would be looking for to change the sentence.
So there are 5 factors called the Miller factors. There's the age, there's the maturity, there's the circumstances of the crime, and there's the rehabilitation, and there's one more. It's actually the participation within the crime. Those are the 5 factors, a little bit out of order there. In other words, you can still be convicted of first-degree murder if you're the getaway car driver. That's not the shoot. It's different. It doesn't apply in this particular shooter's case. So the big factors that we're looking for is the age and maturity, A family life is another factor that kind of goes into the maturity, and then the possibility for rehabilitation and the facts of the case. And the judge he spared reading the facts of the case. I have a feeling at sentencing we're going to hear a lot more about it. But those are the 5 factors, really. It's the age of the defendant, his family life, the circumstances of the crime, and then the possibility for rehabilitation. Those are the big issues. And the judge went right down, again, reading the opinion for about an hour, basically said, yeah, he's 15 years old, but he's mature. Yes, his family was messed up, but they didn't harm him. There was no abuse. They went on family vacations. The circumstances of the crime, awful, planned, calculated, well-researched. And then rehabilitation, when this guy commits 4 violations in the jail now, the judge said rehabilitation is slim. This shooter didn't get any credit and really got no sympathy, in my opinion, from the judge in this case. But we'll find out at sentencing. Still not done.
Because of his age, Charlie, is this something down the line that his legal team would be able to appeal if they were able to say he's grown in some way since once he is sentenced and he spent some time in jail? Do they get an opportunity to get someone else to take a look at that and see if it needs to be revisited?
I think if the question is, will this be appealed, the answer is going to be yes, for sure. If nothing else, on the issue of rehabilitation, this is kind of a novel issue, a legal issue as far as rehabilitation goes. Most people in these Miller-type hearings have already been in prison for years, and they have a track record of being rehabilitated. Listen, prison, you can get rehabilitated. You can get your GED, you can go for anger management classes, you can go through a lot of things. Unfortunately for this particular shooter, he'd only been in jail for a little while, so there's no real background.
Right.
So the judge is kind of looking at past practices and then what he did do in the short time he was in jail. So on that alone, I think this case will be appealed. Probably not now, until the sentence. And then, yes, I think it will be appealed by, he's got a right to an appeal anyway, so I'm sure they're going to take it, especially if he gets life in prison. He's got a long time to wait on appeal. But I think there are that one little legal issue, yes, but I do believe this will be appealed, for sure.
All right, Charlie Langton reporting for us live. Thank you so much.